Good afternoon, our respected guest. My name is Rasul Naqavi from Georgetown University. I'm also the director of Mufid Academic Seminary. We are here today to commemorate the life and the legacy of late Dr. Mahmoud Ayoub. This event is being held with the invitation of Hartford International University for Religion and Peace, where late Professor Dr. Ayoub had found a loving home toward the end of his academic career. Without further ado, I would like us, and before inviting our guest, I would like us to hear a message from Dr. Joel Lohr, President of Hartford International University.
Good afternoon. Juma Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you all. It is my pleasure and privilege to greet you today, even while we remember a man and we mourn. My name is Joel Lohr. I'm president here at Hartford International University for Religion and Peace. And it was my pleasure to get to know and to come to love Dr. Mahmoud Ayoub. We remember this man today as a giant, not only in his scholarship and in his teaching, but in the way he conducted his life as a man of love, a man of wisdom, and a man who gave so much. We're thankful for him. I acknowledge him today as someone who has blessed me in my life. Early in my time here as president, he welcomed me many times into his home. He and his lovely wife, Lena, shared food with me, shared tea with me, made me feel part of their family, and made me feel loved. I'm thankful for him. I'm also thankful for his scholarship. I'm thankful for the ways in which he taught in the classrooms that I had, sharing his wisdom in Muslim-Christian relations. He was a scholar who cared about the details. As we all know, this was especially interesting and difficult for him with his loss of eyesight or being born blind. And it still amazes me to this day, his incredible output, given what so many would see as a disability. And yet somehow he came to live through that as some kind of redemptive suffering, which he wrote extensively about, a work that is now in many ways a classic. His books in particular that have blessed me are his books on Islam, published with One World, the book Faith and History, as well as his book on Dialogue, a Muslim view of Christianity. He will be remembered here in perpetuity as someone who gave to us, especially who instituted the Shia chair for the Imam Ali Chair for Shia Studies. We are so thankful for the way that he spearheaded the process to bring about that chair, that it might live on here in perpetuity. And we are blessed indeed to have Professor Hussein Kamali fill that chair today, epitomizing what it could be for dialogue, intra and interfaith dialogue. The world is a better place because of Dr. Professor Mahmoud Ayub. I mourn with you today. I celebrate with you today a life well lived, and we're thankful. Thank you.
Well said, Dr. Lohr. The world is a better place and became a better place with him. Today, we are also honored. We are also honored with the presence of Miss Lina Ayub and Professor Linda Clark, and also the son and daughter of our beloved Professor Ayub. Next, I would like us to hear a few words from Firas Ayub, Dr. Ayub's son. Firas, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Naghavi, and welcome to everyone. I wanted to thank everyone on behalf of my family for organizing this beautiful memorial. I'm going to just, I prepared just some brief thoughts that I wanted to share about my father, and I need to apologize in advance. I'm actually at work, so I've taken some time just to be with you, but if I need to leave before the end of this program, it's just because of work commitments. Okay, so yeah, I would like to share something that I've written. Inna lillahi wa inna ilahi raj'un. We surely belong to God, and to him we shall return. As the famous Persian poet Rumi once said, I learned that every mortal will taste death, but only some will taste life. My father lived and tasted many different lives as a professional musician, as a world-renowned academic and interfaith leader, as a Christian, as a Muslim, and countless other lives. He is my shining example of brilliance, charisma, tenacity, and imagination. His being blind never stopped him from achieving all he set his mind to. Born in 1935 to a peasant family in southern Lebanon, it was these qualities that took him to Harvard and beyond, all over the world, to meet with presidents, popes, and politicians, to spread his message of interfaith dialogue and coexistence. Throughout his life, my father never forgot his roots or the kindness that others showed him. When students and friends needed support, or his 7 brothers and sisters and their families needed to emigrate to escape the Lebanese civil war, he always stepped in and did what was right. Despite the discrimination he experienced because of his disability, he believed in the goodness of humanity and surrounded himself with those who also did. Though he had many accomplishments, I think he would most want to be remembered for his kindness, humanity, and empathy. As my father, he always put me and my sister first. He gave us the best education he could and supported us through his tenderness and love. He was our Baba, the best Baba in the world. In his final years, we would take long walks together by the St. Lawrence River here in Montreal, and I got to know him even more deeply. We developed another relationship, best friends. If I am able to carry my father's qualities and legacy with me, then I, like him, will also have tasted life. And this is just a quote, another quote from Rumi, just to close these thoughts. I want to hold you close like the lute so we can cry out with loving. Your body is away from me, but there is a window open from my heart to yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Firas. Thank you so much for sharing with us. It's not that you only who call him Baba. Many people around the world will call him Baba, but they're intellectual Baba, people who learned from him. And also, thank you so much, Samaya Khanum, for being with us today. We would love to hear from you as well. Bismillah.
All right, thank you all very much. My name is Samaya Ayub. I am Dr. Ayub's daughter. And, you know, my father gave us all many gifts. He gave me many gifts. He taught me Quran. He taught me how to play the violin. He taught me the gift of empathy and love and patience. And, you know, he just gave us all so much. He's not with us anymore, but he is here in my heart and my soul. He is my Albi. In Arabic, we say Albi. He's part of my heart and soul now, and this is his home, and this is where he lives. He lives with my brother and his Albi too. One gift that my father gave us, that my Baba gave us, was something that you know, we'll be able to take with us. So he wrote his memoirs, and I'd like to thank my mother, Linda Clark, Dr. Linda Clark, for helping edit and, you know, helping along with this process, and my dear mother, Lena, who helped keep him healthy and was such a devoted wife. So, you know, I really am so proud to have his memoirs finished. And, you know, it's a gift that we all have, and that we can all share. So with that, I would just like to read a short excerpt from my father's finished memoirs titled Days of My Sojourn. Before I begin, I would like to say, for my Baba, we ask Allah for forgiveness and mercy. To Allah we belong, and to him we shall return. Habibi, my Baba, I loved him so much. Chapter 10, The Night of Destiny. The Quran says of the night of destiny on which God first revealed his world, that it is better than 1,000 months. The angels and the spirit descend therein by permission of their Lord for every affair. God says in the Quran, and peace it is until the breaking of dawn. Muslims believe that the night of destiny occurs on one of the odd-numbered nights of the last 10 days of the fasting of Ramadan. Some of the scholars of the community speculate that the night of destiny is on the eve of the 27th day, and others the eve of the 23rd, but it is widely believed that God concealed the sacred night in one of the last 10 nights so that people would celebrate all the nights, just as there is an hour on Friday in which God answers all prayers, but which he has not revealed, so that people pray with fervent hope the whole day. My grandmother Sultana's stories about the night of destiny made me long to witness that blessed night. To that end, in a year in which I was about 9 years old, I went up on the roof in the evening of each of the odd-numbered days in the last 10 days of Ramadan and raised the call to evening prayer. Before a proper mosque was constructed with a minaret, a male from the family would sometimes go up and give the call to prayer, and a few of these could be heard echoing around the village, especially during Ramadan. It was unusual for a boy to raise a call of prayer, but I wanted to hurry the breaking of the fast and beginning of the night. The courtyard of our house was partly shaded by an old walnut tree with 2 smaller apricot trees at the edge of the vegetable garden. When the evening meal and lengthy visits from relatives were finished and everyone is asleep, I knotted one of the large scarves of my mother used to cover her head around my neck, tied it to one of the apricot trees, and lay down to wait in the courtyard. It is believed that at a certain moment of the night of destiny, the heavens open up to give rain, and the trees bow down in worship of God. At that time, a light fills the horizon, the gates of heaven open, and whatever anyone prays for, they will have. I tried my best to keep awake until that happened, and thought that if I did fall asleep, the tree would pull the scarf on my neck and wake me up when it fell down in worship. I thought about asking my parents to be rich, for me to have my sight back. But I fell asleep and found in the morning that the tree had somehow prostrated itself without waking me. My grandmother Sultana told me that only the foolish see the night of the destiny. Perhaps I was not foolish enough to deserve the great vision, or it is the blessed night comes into the heart of every human being who is one of the true friends of God. It does not come to doubters like me. Thank you. That is an excerpt from my father's memoirs, which inshallah we hope to have published very soon, titled Days of My Sojourn. Thank you. And thank you all for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Samaya Khanum. Thank you so much for sharing. And we all are looking forward to that, inshallah. Next, I would like to invite my dear beloved professor, respected Dr. Mohsen Kadivar from Duke University, who is, without any exaggeration, a leading voice in the Islamic studies in the United States. Dr. Kadivar, Bismillah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Naqvi, for your kind words. So, assalamu alaikum to everyone, especially the dear members of Professor Ayoub family. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Min al-mu'mineen rijalun sadaqu ma ahadullah alayh, faminhum man qada nahbah, wa minhum man yantadhir, wa ma baddalu tabdila. Among the believers are men who have been true to that which they pledged unto God. Among them are those who have fulfilled their vow, and among them are those who wait, and they have not changed in the list. The Quran, Surah 33, verse 23. Professor Mahmoud Mustafa Ayoub was one of the particulars of this verse in our time. He was a sincere believer in God, pious Muslim, a lovely Shiite, a distinguished scholar of Christian-Muslim relations, and a prominent scholar of Islamic studies, Quranic studies, and especially Shiite studies. I met Professor Ayoub for the first time on October 10, 2011, in a conference, The State of the Study of Shiite Islam in North America and Europe, at Hartford Seminary, now Hartford International University. Also, I read many of his books before that. It was the introduction to establishment of Imam Ali Chair for Shiite Studies and Dialogue among Islamic School of Thought. I found that this was the design, fruit, and the product of Professor Ayoub. This is my pleasure that my friend Dr. Hossein Kamali continues his way. On April 7, 2016, Dr. Muhammad Fakhoury and Professor Said Hossein Nasr invited Professor Ayoub and I to a symposium on Shiite and Sunnis at George Washington University. This was another opportunity to learn more from his experience and knowledge. In Islam, I revisited the deep article, Religious Freedom and Law of Apostasy in Islam, 1994. This article was the first academic article in Western language from a Shiite perspective on this sensitive subject. He continued his brilliant thought in another essential article, Religious Pluralism and the Quran, in his book, Contemporary Approaches to the Quran and Sunnah, 2012. Professor Ayoub's book could be divided to three categories. First, Islamic and Quranic studies. In this category, there are two books, the Quran and its interpreters in 2 volumes, 1984. And Islam, Faith and History, 2005. Second, on Christianity. He wrote a book in the name of A Muslim View of Christianity, Essays and Dialogue, 2007. This book could be called his magnum opus because of his study as British Presbyterian Missionary School and his experience of Baptist Church as well as Society of Friends, the Quakers. In my knowledge, he was the most, not one of the most distinguished Shiite Muslim in the modern time on Christology, and among the most prominent Muslim scholars in the same field. His knowledge and experience were from inside. His book has 4 parts, including Christological issues, Muslim perspective, and Muslim-Christian dialogue in the modern world, comparative studies. The chapter on Toward on Islamic Christology 1 and 2 is among the most essential. The third and the last category is on Shiite studies. There are 2 books in this category. The first one, The Crisis of Muslim History, Religion, and Politics in Early Islam, 2003. This is a very fair and academic report from first-hand Sunni sources in support of Shia perspective on successorship to the Prophet. As we know, he got his PhD from Harvard University under 2 prominent scholars, Professor Wilfred Cantwell Smith and his supervisor, Professor Anne-Marie Schimmel. This is his PhD dissertation after studying and experiencing Christianity, redemptive suffering in Islam, a study of devotional aspects of Ashura in 12-year Shiism, 1978. Professor Ayoub wrote in the dedication page of this book, quotation, to the people of Iran, in grateful recognition of the inspiration I received during my stay in Mashhad, from their devotion to the memory of martyr of Karbala and his family, end of quotation. This book is one of the classics on the massacre of Karbala in 680. Assalamu ala Hussein. Professor Mahmoud Ayoub's life was absolutely productive. I ask for the prayers to Allah for forgiveness and entrance into paradise. Asha Saida wa Mata Saida. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kadivar. I hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help all of us to continue the works that late Dr. Ayoub and also the great scholars like you and other scholars that we have in front of us to inshallah lead the path that you have established in front of all of us. Next, I would like to invite my beloved professor, Dr. Fakhoury from George Washington University. And among many of other things and many of the scholarly works that Dr. Fakhoury has done, he has also established an MA in Islamic Studies with Shi'i concentration. And I hope, inshallah, that will grow as well. We would like to hear from you, Dr. Fakhoury, next. Bismillah. I think you're mute, doctor. Sorry.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. First of all, thank you, Rasul, for your kind introduction. I'll try not to let it go to my head. You are very kind. Thank you. I also wanted to thank Dr. Kamali and really appreciate his effort to have this very important occasion organized and everybody else who collaborated with him in this wonderful, wonderful event. Now, let me address the family members of Dr. Ayoub first. Samaya, Lena, Faris, if I'm saying it correctly, you have lost a father, a husband. We have lost a friend, and the world has lost an outstanding scholar, the like of which we are not going to see anytime soon. And I say this with a great deal of certainty. He was a very easy person to become friend with, and a very difficult person not to like, much less to forget. From the first time that we met way back, I think it was in the late 80s or early 90s, in a closed session. Before that, we had met many times in conferences, but we traveled to Iran for a couple conferences on Mullah Sadra. And I want to bring a couple special traits in him that some of us may not be as familiar, at least because I observed firsthand. I'm sure you all had seen how humble he was, never claimed anything, especially when it comes to scholarship. But of course, everybody knew his scholarly standing. But one thing that I really noticed that unlike many other scholars who may be very dry, very tasteless, and quite frankly boring individuals, he was a bundle of joy. I have seen very few people in my life who had the sense of humor that he did. And I remember in one of the conferences, we were staying in a hotel together along with Dr. Karim Crow. I wish he were here too. And as soon as we sat down at the table for dinner, he started saying joke after joke after joke, and everybody around us heard us laughing, and they also wanted to see why is it that we are laughing so hard. And then a few of them he invited actually to join our table and share the joy. That was really something that I always admired in him, along with his scholarship, because that trait was also reflected in his classes, but also in other conferences that I observed with him at IIIT here in Herndon. At the moment that everybody was beginning to feel a little bit tired of the discussion, of long discussion, he would throw a joke and everybody else would burst into laughter. That was quite a skill that not very many of us have. And indeed, one of the things that I remember him is because of that. Dr. Kadivar very eloquently talked about his works, and I really won't have much to add to it. But one thing that is very, very important for me is, in addition to this, he was, in addition to his scholarship, he was also a man of taste for music and poetry. And whenever we got together, he took my hand and said, recite a couple lines of poetry from Rumi or Hafiz, and he knew them very well. I'm pretty sure he was reading them, but he wanted to hear from me. So whatever I remembered, I read, and he always shook my hand and said, God bless you. And then sometimes he even started writing. I knew that he knows those poems by heart, but out of humility, he wanted to tell me, the younger guy, that he can learn at any time from anyone. And this humility really was so touching, The other thing that I, in fact, remember of him, nowadays, two things in academia have become very fashionable. Most everybody is speaking about interfaith dialogue. And quite often, most of the time, these discussions become more like intellectual gatherings. A conference comes and goes and nothing is followed up. Dr. Ayoub was one of the first people long before this issue became fashionable. In fact, he started teaching it and experiencing it and taking practical steps to make it happen. And at Hartford Seminary, he did quite a bit. And in IIIT, he also did quite a bit, not only between Muslims and Christians, but also between Shiites and Sunnis. And when he stepped in the room, especially at IIIT, people really forgot any denomination. Everybody forgot whether he is a Sunni or Shia. Everybody felt to be really a Muslim in his presence. He has such a strong presence, not only academically spoke as an authority, but his humility and his innocence. He had a kind of childlike innocence in his soul that really impressed everyone that talked to him, without he trying even to impress anyone. That childlike innocence really is something that always I will remember. The other thing that has become very fashionable these days is everybody is speaking of transcendent unity of religions. And in one way or the other, everybody expresses his opinion. But again, this is an issue that Dr. Ayoub not only wrote about, not only talked about in every gathering, but he lived it. He experienced that. And to substantiate this claim, let me just quote this very beautiful statement that in fact is in his book, I believe, on Islam and Christianity. He says, my Christian past and my present Islamic faith commitment have convinced me that God is the absolute truth or ultimate reality, and that Islam, Christianity, and indeed all religions are only ways to this transcendent truth. Nobody else could have said more beautifully than this. And in fact, what makes a statement like this very important is not because it's a powerful statement, but because Dr. Ayoub lived this claim, lived this experience. He experienced, in fact, this transcendent unity of religions in life and in his practice, in his attitude toward others, and most especially in his humility and humble attitude toward others. Well, being a Persian, I can't help end my short talk with a poem, which is very, very telling about Dr. Ayoub's life, his legacy, and his eventual ascension to heaven. I will read the poem in Persian first and then translate into English. And especially this is for Dr. Ayoub's son, who I found very interested in poetry. It says, یاد داری که روز آمدنت همه خندان بودند و تو گریان آنچنان زی که وقت رفتن تو همه گریان شوند و تو خندان. It's very, very descriptive of Dr. Ayoub's life and legacy. He says, do you remember the day that you were born to this world? Everybody was laughing and joyous, and you were crying. Babies cry. Live in such a way that when you leave this world, everybody would be crying and you would be laughing and smiling. And this is how Dr. Ayoub left this world. I have no doubt all of us mourn in one way or the other. Some of us are crying outwardly, some of us, I'm sure, crying inwardly for this great loss. But I have no doubt he's looking at us from up there from heaven and smiling at us and reciting this verse of the Quran that, again, based on his experience, that indeed, إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. And he was indeed a wali in his own way. I wish Sabr Jamil, beautiful patience for his surviving family members, all friends, students, colleagues, and anyone who experienced Dr. Ayoub's presence. May he rest in peace in heaven. I have no doubt he is in peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fakhoury. Thank you so much for sharing and reminding us of many other aspects of this great man, not only academically, but also in many other aspects. He has been, and he's gonna be, inspirational for all of us, inshallah. Welcome, Dr. Sajjad Rizvi. You have honored us with your presence today. Next, I would like to invite my beloved Professor Dr. Sajjad Rizvi, a prominent intellectual scholar in Shia studies from University of Exeter in United Kingdom. Bismillah, Dr. Sajjad.
Thank you for the invitation, and it is in fact a real pleasure and a privilege to be speaking in memory of Professor Ayoub. I don't know what has been said before. Let me just say something in terms of my own experience and my own interaction as just a few goodly words, you know, as we always say in the funeral prayer, that we only know good of the person that we are in the process of burying. So let us say some good words. I guess, like many people, my first interaction was through his works. In particular, the works on Quranic exegesis. And a number of years later, when I was putting together my own project of an anthology of translations, I looked quite carefully at what he'd done. It was in many ways a model for how to approach it, how to bring lots of voices together. And I think very significantly, given his life's academic work and interpersonal, intersubjective work as well, was to show that the Islamic traditions are very much diverse. There are lots of voices speaking together. There's no necessary need to privilege one over the other, but they significantly, talk together to try and make sense of a common inheritance that they have. In this case, of course, being the Quran itself. So that was a very important notion which comes out of it, this diversity of the voices. And it's a shame that people often who work on tafsir, on Quranic exegesis, don't necessarily pick up on that point as well as they perhaps should. Of course, then, reading his other works, reading his important articles, actually later then coming to a seminal dissertation, which I think still remains quite a unique work, really getting to the heart of what is, Shi'i Islam all about. It's not just about a set of ideas, it's not just about a set of theological commitments, but rather it is about a pivotal historical event and the way in which that sacred history has meaning for people and continues to have meaning for people, and how it is commemorated. I was just in another conversation and we were talking about this question of spirituality. And, quite often when we talk about spirituality, we come with certain assumptions in the modern world about how either spirituality is something opposed to materiality, or it is something opposed to institutional religion, as if, what you do outwardly has no significance. But what you find in that particular work, the famous, Redemptive Suffering book, is an understanding that spirituality is about what we do as people within societies, people within communities, and how those actions, those commemorations, those ways in which we connect with each other, the communality of it, also connects with theological ideas, philosophical ideas, our assumption of metaphysics in this world. And also how it allows us then to also think about what the common features are across different religious traditions. In some ways, I consider that work also to be one of the foundational works of sort of Islamic Christology, because it's making very significant connections with how we might consider another pivotal historical event for Christians, of course, which is the crucifixion and the resurrection of Christ. So, that I think was absolutely significant. And the very fact that he was then extensively working in Christian-Muslim relations and engaging at that level as well, alongside the intra-faith, intra-Muslim discussions, which in some ways are evocative in his work on Quranic exegesis. And then, of course, later with his, I guess, his last two works, which are really trying to get to grips with what the Islamic tradition is, again, returning to this notion of how it is that we connect with each other, not just across different Islamic confessions, but also how you connect with other people of faith, other people of religions in a significant manner. Now, in terms of my personal relations, and I think this is an important point to mention, because I know a lot of people who, for example, they were students of his like 30, 40 years ago, but he remains the first person they remember. It was some of his, I found out about sort of his sad passing precisely from one of his former PhD students. And these are people who still, when you speak to them, their faces light up. I mean, we all kind of aspire to be the sort of people that when others speak about us, their faces light up. It's a blessing, and it's this kind of luminosity. It's a nuraniya, as you would say, which is so fundamental. Would that I were someone who my students in the future would speak to me of, and their faces would kind of flourish and be luminous. And of course, then meeting him as well. I first met him, I think in '96, it might have been. In the late '90s, there used to be these rather unique gatherings in upstate New York and Binghamton, convened by Professor Parviz Moravij, the meetings of the Society for the Study of Islamic Philosophy, and he was, Professor Ayoub was often there. That's why I first met him. And it was merely in the case of, I think I was giving a paper and I didn't know who he was. I saw this man sitting at the back, listening intently, and he was the first person to ask me a question. And then afterwards, we got to speaking. And what I thought was really interesting was not only was this someone who engaged with you intellectually in a serious manner, but then when he found out that you were a student or you were, in a different stage in your career, he was extremely encouraging, was very generous with his time, was someone who basically took care, and that I think is a great kind of gift and virtue for someone to have. We all supervise students, and we often complain about these things, and students complain about us, but it's the rare person who, as I mentioned before, not only inspires love and affection in their students, but also genuinely cares about them, not just about their dissertation, but cares about them as a person. And that, I think, is a wonderful, wonderful quality. And then I noticed that again, speaking to him now and then over the years, the last time I spoke to him actually was during I think it was during a proposal defense. And it concerned a common student that we have, because much later, when he was at Hartford, we have at Exeter, we used to have a common PhD program with Hartford, which we no longer do. But in that process, at one point, I had the privilege of co-supervising a dissertation, and it was a very wonderful, interesting experience for me. The defense, he was very encouraging, but he was also very firm, and he was tough in the defense, which I thought was quite interesting. It's exactly the way I think a supervisor should be, someone who really asks the important questions, before you come to the examination at the end, but also is doing it in a manner which is constructive and encouraging as well, nurturing in that sense, has that kind of pastoral sense as well. And it was in those contexts, which were probably my last interactions with him. And I think perhaps the funniest thing about it was that he remembered every single time that we'd actually spoken and met before, which I was quite surprised at. He remembered the fact that we had met, almost 20 years prior to that conversation. And that he was asking about me and who I was and where I was going. And I think that, again, is a wonderful gift. So, it's been said before that, the quality of a person is that, when you are with them, you are joyous. When you are away from them, you feel sorrow, because you are in this case of, the classic case of the lover who is detached from the beloved. And that's often how we feel about those who pass, who have a significance for us. And I think that is, in a sense, the way in which the field and people who know him see it. It is that kind of sense of being orphaned, but then also being able to take joy in one's memories and to take joy in the legacy that he has left. So, of course, for his family, for those who loved him, close to him, my deepest condolences and my enjoyment of peace and comfort and patience to you all, and may his memory remain in all our minds, and may continue to give us joy, and may that remembrance then be of benefit and continue to be of benefit to him in his path in the hereafter. Thank you for including me in this, and my salams to you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Sajjad, Rizvi, and Amin. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala respond to all of the prayers that you made. Next, I want us to hear from Dr. Colleen Key. She teaches at Hartford International University, and she wants to share with us some of the, again, personal memories that she had with Dr. Ayoub, and how influential Dr. Ayoub has been in her academic life. Dr. Colleen, Bismillah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and thank you very much. And now you will see one of Dr. Ayoub's former students' faces light up as Dr. Rizvi just said. I co-sign onto everything that he said. It's like you spoke my heart. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Mursaleen, Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. I wish to extend deepest and most heartfelt condolences for myself and my husband, Bilal Ansari, to dear Lena. I see you there. Good to see you. Sad to see you. Firaz, Samaya, and all of Dr. Mahmoud's family, loved ones, and friends. May the most merciful comfort you and grant you peaceful hearts as you experience and process the loss of one so dear to you and to so many. And may God make Dr. Mahmoud's grave spacious and full of light, forgive him his shortcomings, and give him a beautiful place in paradise. As a PhD student in the joint program that Dr. Sajjad Rizvi just spoke about between the University of Exeter and Hartford, I was given the gift and honor of working with Dr. Mahmoud as my stateside dissertation advisor. I was also blessed to have Dr. Ian Netton at Exeter on the other side, both of them squeezing me, pushing me, and they were both so wonderful in different ways. My dissertation was an argument about the extraordinary significance of Edward Said's rhetoric of secular criticism. It was a term that he used a lot in his writing, secular criticism. And it was an interesting concept that he used in a very, very special way. The way that he used this term, I found that his work on the question of Palestine and Israel and his life actually instantiated this concept in every way. And that was what my work was about. Dr. Mahmoud had many gifts and abilities, as everyone who knew him will attest. For me, as his student, his ability to tell stories and share insights into Said, whom he had known personally, was invaluable. I always left my meetings with Dr. Mahmoud feeling that I had just had rare glimpses into two great scholars, Edward Said and Mahmoud Ayoub. And after coffee that Lena would prepare and sitting with both of them and meeting with Dr. Ayoub, my heart was full every time I left. Dr. Mahmoud would share his memories not only of Edward, but also of Memoriam Said, with whom Dr. Mahmoud had gone to primary school. He would also relive his memories of his early life in Lebanon. I had read all his books and was in awe of his scholarship and intellectual acumen. I had heard from one of his Harvard colleagues that he had been a formidable intellectual sparring partner, and people were afraid of him back in the day when he was a young scholar. People were afraid to debate with him because they could never win. And now, in the last decade of his life, as his dissertation student, I was grateful to be working under such a master. But what was for me especially meaningful was that Dr. Mahmoud's wisdom and spiritual presence was a well whose waters refreshed and animated me through the writing. I would leave my meeting at his home with insights and energy, and then I would write like the wind blowing today. It's been very windy since last night. There were times when I thought I would never finish. Dr. Mahmoud assured me that I would, and I did. Dr. Mahmoud was known for many things, with our speakers today who have so rightly memorialized and honored him. I would like to share just two things that Dr. Mahmoud said that convey so much about his spirit, and I think confirm all the things that have been said about him. Once in a class, he asked for some water, and when he finished it, he said to us in that soft voice of his, "I don't know why people want to drink all these man-made things when Allah has given us water, and there is nothing better than water. It is so good." And ever since, I think about the miracle of water every time I drink it. And I remember Dr. Mahmoud, his humility and his simplicity. I will end with this. This is always hard for me. Sorry. The last time that I visited Dr. Mahmoud at his home on the Hartford campus, we were sharing things that mattered to us and talking about the future. I had finished the PhD, and Dr. Mahmoud said, "I am old now. I've accomplished many things. Now, I just want to go home to Lebanon, to sit under a tree and remember God." This will always remain with me. As a profound expression of what is important from this great scholar and teacher. This was Dr. Mahmoud for me. May God be pleased with him and reward him eternally. And thank you for allowing me to speak about my experience with him.
Thank you so much, Dr. Colleen, for sharing all of these beautiful stories, especially the water story and him seeing the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in nature. This really resonates with all of us. So, of course, last but not least, I would love to invite our beloved professor, Dr. Mohsen Kamali from Hartford International University. Dr. Kamali, as you all know, holds the Imam Ali Chair in Shia Studies and Dialogue among Muslim Schools of Thought, which is the living intellectual legacy of Dr. Mahmoud Ayub. Dr. Kamali, Bismillah.
In the name of God we begin, and in God we trust. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa man taba'ahu bis-sidq. We are here to remember the late Professor Mahmoud Ayub. My first condolences to his beloved family, to Lina Ayub, whom I last saw with him when I started my work here. I know you feel a void, and we mourn with you. And my condolences to Professor Linda Clark, to Firas Ayub, and to Samaya Ayub. And thank you for your beautiful recollections of your beloved father. Allow me to co-sign, as Professor Keys said, and to say amen to everything that you have all said, each and every one. And thank you, everyone, for coming, both the panelists and the people in the audience. I would also like to thank the Hartford International University for paying this tribute to the late Dr. Ayoub, a distinguished member of the faculty of this campus, of the campus. And I particularly want to thank President Joel Lohr, Ms. Susan Schoenberger, and Mr. Steve Havira, and of course, last but not least, Dr. Rasoul Naghavi, who has been moderating so capably this event. I would say a few words about when I first met Dr. Ayoub back in 1993. At the time, he was working on a monumental task, and that was the translation of one of the most important commentaries on the Quran, arguably the most important commentary on the Quran in the second half of the 20th century, the great Al-Mizan fi Tafsir Ay al-Quran by the late Muhammad Hussein Tabatabai, Al-Lamia Tabatabai. So that's how I was introduced to him. Like Professor Rizvi mentioned, and Professor Kadivar also, his Quranic work set an example for all of us. I enjoyed benefiting from his 2 volumes, The Quran and Its Interpreters, published by SUNY Press, and also the smaller one that he published previously on the 30th part of the Quran. At this current university, we feel committed to carrying on his work, both in Quranic studies, in Shia studies, in interfaith work, and in intrafaith work. As Dr. Naghavi mentioned, the Imam Ali Chair embodies the legacy of Professor Ayoub. And it is the Imam Ali Chair for Shia Studies and dialogue among Muslim schools of thought, or Muslim schools of law, or legal schools, or more broadly, schools of thought. And we are very much committed to that work. I would like to thank the 2 previous scholars who held this position, Dr. Sayyid Ammar Nakhshavani, and Dr. Saifuddin Kara, who had this position, who held this position before I started this work in 2019. I would also welcome this opportunity to name at least a few of Professor Ayoub's colleagues at previously the Hartford Seminary, currently the Hartford International University for Religion and Peace. I would like to name Reverend Dr. Grafton. I would like to name Reverend Dr. Scott Thuma. I would like to name Nick Mumedjian, who worked very closely with the late Dr. Ayoub on the Journal of Muslim World, and of course, Professor Timur Yuskayev, my colleague, who is currently the editor-in-chief of the journal, of the renowned Journal of the Muslim World. I am glad to share this with you that Professor Yuskayev and other colleagues are planning a special issue to be published next year, hopefully, in the honor of the late Professor Ayoub. I hereby invite you all to consider contributing to that special issue. And I am honored to say humbly that I have proposed and I have contributed a small amount to the establishment of a prize or fellowship named for Professor Mahmoud Ayoub at the Hartford International University. I would also like to thank the donors who made Professor Ayoub's dream come true. I would like to mention Dr. Ali Shakibai, who was an instrumental force in bringing this about. I would like to thank the Khoja, the 12er Shia Khoja community, and members of the Pakistani community who contributed to the establishment of the Imam Ali chair. I will just add one word following what Colleen said, my colleague, about Edward Said. I also happened to take a course with Edward Said back in the 1990s. And what I remember best about Said was his commitment, was his intellectual brilliance, unparalleled brilliance. And when I remember Ayoub, most of all, of course, I remember his scholarship, but I remember his handshake, sincere, firm, and kind. Let us come together and recite the Fatiha for him, to remember him as we Muslims do. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Ya Allah, we ask for Mahmoud Ayoub to be received by his Lord in peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Each and everyone. Thank you again, Dr. Nagavi, each and everyone on the panel and in the audience.
وختامه مسك. Thank you so much, Dr. Kamali. Let's again see some of the photos of Dr. Ayoub to end our program with today.